Hello, good afternoon. It is your host, Emmanuel Isaiah Smith, and today's date is Saturday, August 23rd, 2025. The time is 1:55 p.m. and I am in Homestead, Florida. The title of this lecture is Failed State. I've been quite excited about doing this lecture as I have psychologically and academically prepared for it over the past week. And the reason I've been excited to do this particular lecture is because the summation of my work over the past 10 years concerning gang stalking can be accurately described as a treatise on the reality that the country that I live in, the United States of America, is a failed state. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that is not to say that the United States of America has always been a failed state. It just failed the national security test post 9/11. And as a result of that failure, the rest of the federal, state, and local governmental infrastructure, political philosophy, and mechanism have collapsed. The United States of America is officially at the point of a Roman Empire styled meltdown. You all remember the Roman Empire. It began in 27 BC and then lasted until AD 476. And then we saw the division between and then the empire split into two parts, the Eastern Empire and the Western Empire. And then we saw basically the progression from there as the eastern part of the empire, if I'm not mistaken, embraced Christian precepts, which was ironic because Rome before the split between the East and West, Rome was known as the world's preeminent prosecutor and persecutor of Christians. I mean, they would have Christians thrown out into the middle of the Colosseum in Rome, and in front of a full audience of 10 or 20,000 people, they would feed the Christians to lions. Or they would force the Christians to submit, and they would nail them to crosses in front of the entire Colosseum and burn the cross with them on it. Sometimes the Romans would get fancy. The emperor would set it up to where Christians were thrown into the middle of the Colosseum and they were fed to lions and burned on crosses at the same time. Okay, but ironically, when the Roman Empire split into two halves, the western side and the eastern side actually embraced Christianity. And around, the year eludes me at this point, but it embraced Christianity at some point under Emperor Constantine. But what ended up happening to the Roman Empire? How was the Roman Empire? I'm talking the vast Roman Empire, okay? The second greatest empire in human history with respect to square mileage. The Roman Empire is the second greatest in history. The first greatest is the British Empire, which came hundreds of years after the Roman Empire finally fell. But ultimately, the Roman Empire was the second greatest empire in all of history with respect to its sheer size. But I digress. And mind you, this looks a little like street theater. As soon as I started this discourse, I'm in front of the Homestead Station Transit Center. Not 5 minutes after I started my discourse, some alarm starts going off in the transit center, which is about 50 yards in front of me right now. That appears to me to be noise harassment. It appears to me to be street theater. Targeted individuals experience that quite a bit, but I'm going to continue the lecture with that alarm going off as a potent reminder that gang stalking does not sleep. A targeted person could be eating dinner somewhere. The targeted person could be studying for a 200 question exam on a college classroom somewhere. The targeted individual could be at a wedding. The targeted individual could be at a funeral. The targeted individual could be at a baby blessing. The targeted individual could be at their grandmother's 150th birthday. It does not matter. Gang stalking does not sleep. A targeted individual is targeted 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and the various mechanisms which I have discussed on my various websites do not stop, regardless of where the targeted person is. That's why I called America a failed state, but we're going to get into that in a second. Let's continue on with the Roman Empire and how it became a failed state. So how did the Roman Empire eventually fall? The classical Roman Empire, the dramatic Roman Empire, the mighty Roman Empire, the conquering Roman Empire, the same Roman Empire that was mentioned in the Bible as a great beast that went forward conquering and to conquer. The same Roman Empire that ordered the execution of Jesus Christ. The same Roman Empire that ordered the execution of all the apostles. The same Roman Empire that incarcerated St. John the Revelator, who wrote the book of Revelation, and spoke of Emperor Nero, who was the emperor of the Roman Empire during his incarceration in the late 50s AD. As 666 because he was too afraid to say Nero. He knew if he wrote the name Nero in the book of Revelations as the beast and as the Antichrist for his persecution of Christians, that he would be immediately executed. So he used the terms beast and 666 to describe Nero because he was that afraid of him. They're code words for Emperor Nero. That Roman Empire, how was it finally toppled? It was toppled by the Vikings. The Vikings invaded Central and Southern Europe from the north. The Vikings came from Norway and Greenland and Iceland and Sweden and all up that way, Northern Europe. We'll call them the Nordic people. They came down from the north. And mind you, I have a plethora of undercover operatives and gang stalkers approaching as I do this lecture. They're pouring out of the Cybrarium across the street. They're pouring out of the Homestead Station Transit Center. They're pouring out of everywhere. That's how they do. As soon as I start these lectures, they start jumping out of the woodwork. And you know why they start jumping out of the woodwork when I start doing these lectures? I talked about it in my previous lecture. It's called cowardice. They know I'm occupied right now, so they can get their little hidden cameras or their hidden sound boom equipment or their hidden recording equipment and their little domination tactics, even though they don't work, so I'm not sure what they call them nowadays, but they like to wait until I'm occupied. They like to wait until I'm doing a lecture, or they like to wait until I'm eating my lunch or dinner, or they like to wait until I'm sleeping, or they like to wait until I'm actually, I could be in a conversation with my significant other, or I could be doing something important like scanning documents or filling out a form somewhere. That's when they really start jumping out of the woodwork, because they know I'm occupied. And they know that they can get all their little gang stalking crap in while I'm occupied. Because they know if I'm not occupied, I'm looking at them in the face, I'm calling them cowards, I'm pulling out my cell phone, I'm recording them, I'm taking pictures of them, I'm telling them that what they do is garbage, I'm treating them like garbage, I'm letting them know firsthand what I think of them and what I think of their operation. I think it's garbage. So, back to the Vikings as a Miami-Dade County fire truck pulls up. This is not coincidence, ladies and gentlemen. This is street theater. The Vikings invaded from the north and essentially subdued the Romans. And that's when we saw the split between the Eastern and the Western Roman empires. And we started seeing a stark change in how these two halves of the former great Roman Empire were run. And then 800 or 900 years later, then we saw the reunification of the western part of the empire into the Holy Roman Empire, which was centered in Germany. And we essentially saw with the Holy Roman Empire a microcosm of what the United States would be in the future. We saw a collection of nation states all unified by a central authority, a central creed, and a central government. And this Holy Roman Empire, which was centered in Germany, it was very European. It was not terribly influenced by Oriental or Middle Eastern culture and political thought as the Eastern Empire was. And if I'm not mistaken, the eastern part of the empire became ruled by the Ottomans in Turkey, because at the time the Ottomans were considered the most powerful people in the East, and in the West it was pretty much the German states. So you saw the Holy Roman Empire, which was an early manifestation of the kind of country that the United States would be. And eventually the Holy Roman Empire fell for financial reasons. It was pretty much derailed by, clear in my throat, poorly planned financial products that the government, that the central government of the Holy Roman Empire imposed upon its people. Now, how does this factor into what I'm talking about with failed states? America at one time was an empire. Not much unlike the classical Roman Empire, not much unlike the Holy Roman Empire. There was a time where the United States had a international policy that was dominant. Military bases in 80-something odd countries, always on the cutting edge of weapons technology, always on the cutting edge of financial products, always on the cutting edge of athletic superiority with its sports teams. We see evidence of that in the Olympic Games. Not so much these days, but in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, definitely. We saw instances of American superiority in the entertainment business. All of the greatest movies and television shows, actors and actresses were believed to live right here in the United States. And people from all over the world were flocking to the movie theaters and flocking to their local video stores so they could watch American actors and actresses entertain. There was a time where America was seen as one of the great music hubs of the modern world. People from all across the entire world were flocking to their CD and music stores so they could purchase American music artists and listen to and be entertained by them. You had American music artists going on tour around the world. And tens of thousands of people in every city that these music artists went to were flocking to their local concert halls and their local amphitheaters and their local stadiums so that they could hear these American artists perform their music. And American artists at the time, particularly in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, could go anywhere in the world and sell out stadiums left and right. You had a time where all the best, well, I'm not going to say the best video games. I mean, the best video games were produced in Japan. I don't think that anybody would ever argue that. But American consumerism drove the video game market. And we saw these wonderful works of art in the form of video games flooding the American market. And people were consuming those video games. And yes, they were helping people develop superior hand-eye coordination. And a person's worldview could be affected by video games as well. Yeah, your worldview can be affected by the entertainment that you consume. And there was a time where American kids were doing well as far as, with their study habits and so forth. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever contest that the Asian countries, particularly the North Asian countries, like, for example, China, Japan, and the Korean countries have always outperformed the American countries in academics. Okay, especially science, technology, engineering, math. Okay, college entrance exams, medical exams. Like, for example, the MCATs. All right, I don't think anybody would ever argue that, but there was a time where I believe the United States, the academic infrastructure of the United States, the academic establishment of the United States was very proud of its children, particularly its teenagers and young adults, for the work they did in colleges. But nowadays, there are so many different ways to cheat your way through college, cheat your way through high school, cheat your way through middle school, that you have a bunch of really dumb kids graduating with really great degrees, thanks to advanced cheating mechanisms here in the United States, including the use of earpieces, in which kids can sit inside their classrooms and get direct feeds as to what the answers in their tests are. Oh, it's true, ladies and gentlemen. It's damn true. And you got people graduating in this country with medical degrees that they didn't earn, law degrees that they didn't earn. Okay, degrees in education that they didn't earn. You even got police officers cheating on their police academy exams, getting sworn in to police positions, not knowing a damn thing about police work or the law. Because when you cheat, you don't really absorb the information. You see? That's why cheating on tests can get you kicked out of college. Cheating on exams can get you kicked out of college and so forth. Because you're presenting a false narrative as to your ability to do the required coursework. You got military personnel that are cheating their way through military school. Yeah, they're wearing earpieces during tests. They're signaling each other through during tests. I've talked about that in some of my previous videos on weapons technology, how earpieces can be used to cheat in classrooms, and how signaling can be used to cheat in classrooms. Signaling between the students, and sometimes signaling between the teacher and the students. Students can pay off a professor to use signals in a classroom to tell him what the answers are to the tests. Alright, you probably got Air Force captains right now, which are supposed to be some of the best and brightest we have in the Department of Defense, don't know a damn thing about nothing, because they cheated their way through the Air Force exams. And no one ever knew. And now they're drawing a good salary. They own beautiful homes. They own beautiful cars. They have wonderful investments. They have big, beautiful families. They're well respected in their communities. They have everything a man could want. They're on the path to retirement. They have everything that a United States citizen could ever desire, and they only have it because they were good at cheating in their academic curriculums. And if it wasn't for those advanced cheating mechanisms that they are taking part in, they would not have completed their exam satisfactorily, and they would not be in the Department of Defense doing anything of note. Maybe if the Department of Defense set up military bars on their bases so that guys could go in there and grab a drink, some of those guys could be bartenders at those bars. If it wasn't for the cheating mechanism, they wouldn't be Air Force captains, they'd be bartenders. And that I can promise you. But how has America become a failed state, ladies and gentlemen? It's become a failed state because it has allowed a thuggish, degenerate, hostile, useless, deleterious, annoying, and egregiously stupid program called gangstalking to manifest into its legal code, and it has given the national security apparatus, the intelligence apparatus, the military industrial apparatus, the federal law enforcement apparatus, and other unseen apparatuses in this country a blank check to implement what can only be seen as a thuggish martial law in which federal liaisons go to the ground in various points throughout the United States and use a thuggish, degenerate signaling mechanism to signal other gangstalkers to a targeted person's exact location with the intention, the desire, and the instruction of doing nothing more than using disruption tactics, subversion tactics, hindrance tactics, containment maneuvers, various other attacks, and various other disruption mechanisms against that targeted person wherever they are. And like I said, ladies and gentlemen, it does not stop in the targeted individual's backyard. They could be at work, They could be in class somewhere. They could be in some church somewhere. They could be in an entrepreneurial capacity. They could be doing volunteer work somewhere. They could be doing anything at any time. If there are signal takers in that targeted individual's exact vicinity, there will be chaos. The same kind of chaos that preceded the downfall of the Roman Empire more than 1,500 years ago. Now, ladies and gentlemen, do I wish personally that the United States would see some sort of a collapse? No, I don't believe that the United States should see some sort of a collapse, because I live here. I don't want to live in a country where there's going to be a collapse. If there were a collapse here, I'd try to get out of this country as quickly as possible, and that I can promise you. Well, Smith, what are you doing to help prevent a collapse? Well, since I cannot effectively join the free market capitalist competition mechanism in this country, because I've essentially been taken out of society with this thuggish, degenerate, and cowardly program called gangstalking. This deleterious mess of camel excrement called gangstalking. Okay? How do I help prevent a collapse? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the messenger. And I'm going to let the people see, quite frankly, well, I mean, as much as possible, but more so than the actual populace of the country, the Congress of the United States and its Supreme Court, what's happening on the ground, why it's unconstitutional, why it's harmful, and why it's a crime against humanity. I mean, just think of it. How could we call America anything other than a failed state when there are actual federal liaisons who are actual wards of the state who are finding sick or diseased persons, identifying whether or not they take signals, and once identifying them as signal-taking gang stalkers, finding a way to signal that person to the immediate vicinity of a targeted individual with coughs, sneezes, belches, heavy breathing, and other disgusting bodily functions, with no purpose other than to contaminate the targeted person's air, clearing my throat, while expediting germ communications to that target, all as a matter of a signaling mechanism. The United States federal government has authorized a program through its Congress that goes through its national security apparatus, its intelligence apparatus, and its federal law enforcement apparatus that has a liaison program that calls for the signaling of sick or diseased persons to a targeted individual's exact location with the intention of contaminating that person's air and getting them sick. We've talked a little bit about tests today, haven't we? With how easy it is to cheat on tests. There's a cheating industry in this country. Okay, you have people of means who pay thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars for access to these college classroom, police academy, and Department of Defense cheating mechanisms so that people can find ways to cheat their way through their various exams with the best grades possible, because that will ensure a better outcome for them throughout their careers. I mean, when that promotion is coming up, who's the boss going to promote? The guy with the higher test scores on the exam or the guy with the lower test scores on the exam? They can pull that stuff up. They can pull up college GPAs with respect to who they want to promote on the job. They can pull up classroom performances as a factor as to who they're going to promote for their next job. In various companies and organizations, including government organizations, who are they going to promote? The guy with the better grades or the guy with the worst grades? The guy with the better grades, because that shows competency. But it's fake competency, because you got people using these same signaling mechanisms to cheat their way through college and all these other places. How has America failed the test? America's claimed to be some things too, hasn't it? Over the years, it's claimed to be a democracy. It's claiming to be a constitutional republic. It's claiming to be the shining city on the hill. It's claiming to be a lot of things, isn't it? It's claiming to be a justice for all entity. Okay. Well, if it's a democracy, if it's a constitutional republic, if it's a justice for all entity, then why do we have clandestine gang stalking, which is a systematic subversion mechanism in which United States citizens are participating in a federally led disruption, sedition, containment, and disease warfare mechanism? Where the voters allow, let's go down the list and let's give America a report card. Okay, I'm not just pulling this failed state designation out of nowhere. We're going to do a report card. We're going to judge the United States federal establishment by its own standards right now. So let's start at the top. Let's start at constitutional republic. The best grade you can get is an A. The worst grade you can get is an F. And of course, in the middle, you have B, C, and D. Let's look at democracy, and we'll give America a grade on that, and we'll go down the list. What is a democracy? A democracy, and mind you, we're holding America to its own standards here, its own political standards. A democracy is a sovereign entity that allows its populace, namely its registered voters, to popularly elect officials to represent their interests. It also claims to be a sovereign entity that allows its populace, namely its registered voters, to vote on various measures and legal arrangements that come before them. Some of these measures are introduced by Congress, some of these measures are introduced by local city councilmen, some of these measures are introduced at the state level. But people get to vote on these measures from time to time at the polls in various elections throughout the years. Has America, have the citizens had the opportunity to vote on the existence of gang stalking, which is essentially a covert, clandestine intelligence apparatus that has the capacity to change the very trajectory of somebody's life, regardless of if they deserve some sort of punishment or not? The answer is no. No, we have not had the opportunity to vote on gang stalking, and as a matter of fact, it hasn't even come up on the Senate floor. That means it was passed and implemented extrajudicially, behind the scenes, without the will of the people to assert whether or not it should exist. And because this program, gang stalking, is pretty much the be-all to end-all, with respect to its effect on politics, society, the environment, the media, the economy, the military, the police force apparatus, and all private security mechanisms that exist in this country. That makes it a significant part of American life. If the voters have not had the opportunity to vote on this, and it has this much effect on the American way of life, then you know what? The United States of America is less than a democracy. As a matter of fact, it's not even a junior democracy. You know what they call that? They don't call it anything. I'm going to tell you what I call it. I call it a population control mechanism that uses trillions of dollars of state money to ensure that some people have a chance and some people don't. Now, who has a chance and who doesn't? There is no exclusive factor to that. There are a number of variables as to who is assisted by the state and who is disrupted by the state. There are a lot of variables. I talk about it in my in various posts that I have on Facebook, Instagram, etc. America is not a democracy because the most potent social platform that has ever existed in this country has not been voted upon directly by the people, but rather implemented without their knowledge. America fails the democracy test. Let's talk about a constitutional republic, as a number of people approach my general vicinity, probably to record or observe or disrupt. I don't know. But regardless of that, I'm going to continue. Let's talk about constitutional republic. If you go to the United Nations, if you look at the documents they have on the United States of America, you will see it styled as a constitutional republic. Is America a constitutional republic? How is America a constitutional republic? How is America not a constitutional republic? What is a constitutional republic? A constitutional republic is a country, simply a sovereign entity, that has a centralized constitution as the supreme law of the land. And what that means is that all laws that are passed in that country, be they federal, state, or local laws, they all have to line up with the precepts that are present in the Constitution. Now, the United States has it set up to where there's a federal constitution, and then you have a separate individual constitution for all 50 states. So all 50 states in the United States have their own constitution, but their individual constitutions have to line up in political ideology and function to the United States Constitution. Let's look at the United States Constitution. It is a very broad and vague document that outlines general liberties and freedoms for everyone that lives in the territorial borders known as the United States of America. What are some of those broad, vague, blanket constitutional guarantees that the U.S. Constitution affords to every American? Well, you got no taxation without representation, meaning that the federal government cannot legally tax its citizens unless it offers representation for their interests at the federal, state, and local levels. You have things like habeas corpus, the ability to have fair and effective legal considerations made if you find yourself before the state in a court of law. It has, for example, Second Amendment rights, which is the right to bear arms. And mind you, the core definition of the right to bear arms is rooted in allowing the populace of the United States the opportunity to defend itself if its government decided to institute some sort of tyrannical law on them. That's the core of the Second Amendment, is to protect citizens from their own government if it got into the wrong hands. However, in these times, we know that the Second Amendment also has the ability to protect U.S. citizens from each other. I mean, let's face it, this is supposedly the land of the free and the home of the brave. I believed that all of my life, until about the age of 30 years old, when I realized that I was smack dead in the middle of a gang stalking campaign. But I digress. I know there's knuckleheads out there. Yeah, it's nice to have the right to bear arms in case one of those knuckleheads tries to do something outrageous to you or your significant others or your loved ones, particularly violent things. You can protect yourself against them fairly easily. Then, of course, you go and get your local law enforcement and do a report, let them know what happened, so they can document the scenario, and so they can see what's causing all this. What's causing all this knuckleheaded behavior? Well, it's really difficult to know, because the human mind, the human psyche, human psychology is a very difficult thing to fully understand. No one knows why people act like knuckleheads. There could be mental disorders. There could be personal animosity towards society. There could be desperation. There could be the thrill of it. There's a whole number of reasons why people act like knuckleheads. What do I call gang stalkers? I call them knuckleheads. I don't care what your socioeconomic background is. You participate in a signaling mechanism that allows for the constant disruption of the life of another, wherever they are. That is knuckleheaded behavior, and I hate to think the United States would allow such a thing. I give the United States an F on constitutional republic, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing in the United States Constitution that provides for gang stalking. Okay, let us look at the next item on the list, and it's something that I just mentioned not 3 minutes ago: no taxation without representation. You can't tax me if you ain't representing me, right? That's about as straight and clear cut as it gets. Okay, some of you might ask, Mr. Smith, are you a patriot? You are damn right I'm a patriot. And the reason I'm a patriot is because a dissident voice is a patriotic thing. I think too often in this country, people associate patriotism with going along with whatever your government says, whenever it says it, whether or not that government is right or wrong, whether or not that government is upholding its own constitution. I disagree. We have the First Amendment right to free speech in this country. That is a valuable right, and I plan on exercising that right to the full. And I'm saying right here and now, as a disenfranchised U.S. citizen, a targeted individual for 30 years, I didn't realize it until about my 20th year that that's what was happening. But now I do know it's happening. And the minute I found out about it, I started the Gang Stalking in Action live video program online. It's been running strong for 10 years and I haven't looked back. A dissident voice is a patriotic thing because it's possible that the people and the Congress don't realize what's happening on the ground. If they don't realize what's happening, then you have to educate them. And at that point, they can make an informed decision. Only patriotic dissent can bring that kind of action to the Congress, to the people. Clearing my throat, ladies and gentlemen. Remind you, I do these lectures outside, so from time to time, you will hear me raise my voice so as to drown out the background noise that may arise. I have a lot of undercovers that pop up while I'm doing these videos. At first I thought it was simply to disrupt it. Now I believe that it's to disrupt it and sort of vent their jealousy at what I'm doing. Because I'm causing out a potential international socio-political scourge in gang stalking. And the people that I got taking signals to try and disrupt my day-to-day trajectory have to listen to this man break down what they do in such clear detail that they themselves learn something about gang stalking, and they are the gang stalkers. Yeah, that's what they get for participating in it. And yes, they're envious that they have to take those ignorant signals, and I get to stand back on this big, beautiful website and expose it. So, no taxation without representation, ladies and gentlemen. If you don't represent my interests at the federal, state, and local levels, you cannot take my tax dollars at all. You will represent my interest, and you will do so in accordance with the Constitution of the United States and all 50 constitutions throughout this union. Ladies and gentlemen, when I first went to college, I didn't start off at the university level. I started off at community colleges. And when I was at community college, I was required in 2004, that's when I first enrolled for the first time for classes, I was required to enroll in the draft. And I did so willingly, even though I had already met with recruiters prior to that and decided, well, you know, I'm not going to join the war effort because I'm not going to be allowed to do what I want to do. I'm being told to do a different job somewhere else in the world, and that's just not what I signed up for. So we parted ways. But despite that, I still entered my information into the national draft consideration at 19 as a prerequisite for taking classes. And I did so with a sense of duty, and I did so with the expectation that if I were drafted, I'd go willingly. That was my mindset at 19. Can you imagine my frustration when 11 years later I realized that I had a gang stalking campaign on me and that it was federally run? Imagine that, ladies and gentlemen. I am a political dissident. I do not feel that the country that I live in has got it right. And I'm going to tell you something else. I know that there are probably various staff members and various governmental entities around the country that listen to me online and read what I write online, and they probably get offended, they probably get mad, they probably get angry, they probably get scared, they probably get... Okay? It is what it is, ladies and gentlemen. I am not the kind of guy that is going to sit back and allow a program with this degree of thuggishness to run in my vicinity and against my person without voicing my concerns. If you don't like me, if you don't like my project, I kindly ask that you change the channel and stop worrying yourself. Okay? Maybe you could go somewhere and sit down, and instead of watching my program, you can sit down and you can watch a nice episode of Bugs Bunny. You can go somewhere and watch yourself an episode of Elmer Fudd. Go out somewhere and watch yourself a nice episode of the Daffy Duck Show. Maybe there's another TV program you'd rather watch. Maybe you could go somewhere, sit down and watch The Price is Right. A wonderful show back in the 1970s. Go watch Wheel of Fortune. Maybe you could go somewhere else and watch Jeopardy. Watch some of the reruns that had Alex Trebek on them. I'm sure you'll learn something. That's a very educational show. Go watch Jeopardy, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, this is a program that is critical of the United States federal establishment. It's critical of the United States as a sovereign territory. That's the nature of this program. And the reason it's the nature of this program is because I am a disenfranchised political dissident. Now, it's possible that one of these days I'll do a broadcast where I say nice things about America, or I go down the list of things about America that I think it's getting right. And there are some things that the United States has gotten right over the past 250 something odd years. There are some things it's doing right. But for me, as a targeted person, a person who has this horrible militia-like thug element, this mob element, that is not only destructive in its intentions. I mean, could you imagine people in synchronized fashions trying to run you over with vehicles every day? And then later on that same day, similar idiots, similar useful idiots, I call gangstalkers useful idiots. You can use them real easy and they don't ask no questions. They just follow the instructions. Could you imagine later in the day those same useful idiots, some of them, trying to get you sick? And then even later in the day, some of those same kind of useful idiots trying to get you into some type of physical altercation. And then even later in the day, some of those same kind of useful idiots use character defamation tactics and false narrative tactics on you to try and create a hostile environment for you in the community that you live. That's a targeted individual's life right there. Sprinkle in some disruption there. That's what you have. I am not about to sit here and talk lullabies to a country where that's my reality. So if you're the kind of person that likes to listen to what I have to say so you'll have a reason to dislike me even more, I'm going to tell you what I always tell you. Go climb a tree and just sit there. Okay? We're in Miami, Florida. There's a beautiful view here. There's a beautiful breeze going. It's sunny, it's shiny, it's warm. You know, you can observe the nature, you can observe the people. You can just sit there. Maybe you have a coconut. Maybe you can have yourself a nice Mai Tai. You can eat watermelon. You can sit up there and eat fettuccine Alfredo. I don't know. Go climb a tree. Rather than watch me, rather than listen to me, rather than sit down on your butt and find reasons to get angry at what I'm saying, do something else. Take your family to the movies. Go to the mall. Maybe you could go to Sbarro's and have an extra large slice of pizza. Maybe you could take your friends and family to Taco Bell and buy one of those big 32 taco count soft taco boxes, and you all could just sit around at Taco Bell and just eat until you're full, and then go home and watch Sunday football. Okay? Maybe do something that you've never done before. Maybe you could take your family bungee jumping. That's exciting and adventurous. Okay, rather than sit around and listen to what I have to say because you obviously it's not registering with you, maybe you could take your family skydiving. That sounds fun. Or maybe you and your friends and your family, you guys could go white water rafting. Just find the biggest, nastiest river you can possibly find and go white water rafting. Or maybe what you could do is you could go to Hawaii and go and find the deepest part of the ocean you can possibly find. Go out on a nice big boat. Go out into the deepest part of the ocean you can possibly find, right? Okay? With an instructor, you want to be safe. Put on some scuba gear. You and everyone you know, right? Put on some scuba gear, right? All right, now keep in mind, you're in the deepest part of the ocean you can find, right? You got a big boat, right? You got your scuba gear on, right? What you do is you step into a cage, right? Close the cage and lock it and just throw yourself into the ocean and just sit there, right? You'll have an oxygen tank on so you can sit there and just observe nature. If you see a shark, a great white shark coming or something, don't even worry about it. Just take pictures, or maybe you can try and get its attention or something. It'll be beautiful. All of you just jump in the tanks, these little cages, put your scuba gear, or just jump right in the ocean and take pictures, right? Because this program is for people who want the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If you are a person that doesn't like truth, you're not going to like my program. No human is perfect. No government is perfect. And me, as a political commentator, I'm not perfect at all. Neither is any political commentator. I mean, even the great philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, okay, Pythagoras, okay, and then go down the list, okay, Voltaire,